welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I am Allie.
And I'm Sara.
And guys, we can now just breathe because the quarters are over, and my goodness, that was 4 insane games of football.
Deep breath. I found myself at the end of France-Brazil. I was just like, deep breaths. Breathe in, breathe out. I had the pit in the bottom of my stomach. That was absolute chaos. We had 4 quarterfinals. Let's go through the results quickly, and then we'll talk in depth about everything, and we'll go through what we're going to do in this episode. For the record, our brains are a little scrambled still because France-Brazil ended, 5 minutes ago, Allie?
Yep. Yeah, 5 minutes after recording. We're giving you our fresh takes right here, right now.
The freshest of fresh. Let's go through it. We had the 4 quarters today. We just watched 8 hours of football back to back to back to back, everybody. That's a lot of football, and now we're going to talk about it. Allie, you want to take us through the results?
Yeah, so the results in chronological order. Japan have been eliminated by the USA in extra time with a very tight scoreline of just 1-0. Colombia were eliminated by Spain in penalties. Can't wait to get onto that after a 2-2 draw through extra time. Canada are eliminated by Germany again in penalties after a 0-0 draw. And I like Sarah's note here, somehow
it was 0-0. Somehow.
That game was absolutely crazy. And then France, the host nation, have been eliminated by Brazil, who won 1-0 in what has rivaled Germany-Canada as the craziest game of the day.
We had 4 games. The first 3 of them went to extra time. 2 of those went to penalty kicks. In the 4th game, France-Brazil, it didn't go to extra time, but there were 16 minutes of injury time added on. So we might as well say it went to half overtime or something like that. Allie, you tweeted this, and I couldn't agree more. The only issue with extra time on a day like today is that these games were not padded in between. So we were watching extra time, and then we have to flip and watch like the second half only of the next game. Maybe it was a blessing because that was 8 hours, and if it was padded, I think we'd be like bloodshot eyes, 12 hours of football having just watched, absolutely going insane.
Yeah, I think I am quite grateful, but I do feel like we missed a little bit because you just couldn't turn off the game you were watching to move on to the next game.
You really couldn't. But let's talk about it. Before we get into everything, it has to be said, the goalkeepers of today had a day. Highlight, I think, award for all goalkeepers because, oh my goodness. Both Ann-Katrin Berger and Kaylin Sheridan had basically like a goalkeeper off in the Germany-Canada game. Lorena of Brazil saved a pen, came up huge so many times. Cata Cole of Spain came up huge in penalties. And Catherine Tapia of Colombia came up so big against Spain so many times, and it just wasn't quite enough. But we're going to get into all of it. Allie.
So we are going to give you a synopsis analysis of each game. We're going to start off with the last game played, which is France versus Brazil, and we're then going to take you over to their opponents for the semi-final and look at Spain versus Colombia. Heading over to the other side of the bracket, looking at the USA versus Japan, and then we're going to end it with Canada versus Germany. We're also going to give you our predictions for the semi-final at the very end, and you can see how right or wrong we were.
Allie, how's your bracket doing?
Well, Germany have got further than I thought they would. USA right on time. France are out, so that one's out.
I think you're 2 for 4.
2 for 4 because I also said Spain.
Yeah, I'm 3 for 4. I had USA, Germany, France, Spain. France. What a good transition. Let's talk about it. All right. France versus Brazil, and Brazil takes the victory in what can only be described as a quarterfinal for the ages. Brazil win 1-0. France are officially eliminated in their home tournament, and it has to be said, this is probably the last time we saw Wendy Renard at the Olympics.
Yep, easily. I think, she's going to probably have a couple more seasons at Lyon. Maybe a season, and that'll be it. So, yeah, it's quite sad to think. But the curse of the home nation strikes again.
We've been talking about France and their coaching situation as well. Hervé Renard is done with the French women's national team after this Olympics, so he's officially done now. And I'm going to miss him in the world of women's soccer. We don't know what he's doing yet. Hopefully he takes another job in the world of women's soccer because he's such a calming presence on the sideline. I enjoy him. I enjoy his energy based on what I can see through the television. Anyways, France are eliminated. Let's really get into this, Allie, because this was a game you watched more of than me because I was stuck on extra time and pens of the previous game and you switched over and then I told you to switch back for pens. So you saw a little more of the first half. Chaos, it just all broke loose in the second half. But let's talk about the first half because it seems like it was calmer maybe.
I was going to say the first half was really measured. I would say that both teams were going toe-to-toe. France edged it slightly for me. They had a lot more going forward, but what they kept getting caught out on was on the Brazilian turnover. Brazil could pick their pocket in that midfield and go on a break. They did get a pen in the first half. Bacher was pulled down, clear pen, like there was no argument. Got pulled down, that was a pen. But it was a terrible penalty by France. It was, and we've talked about this at length, that the penalties are just not France's strong suit. We've seen this in tournament after tournament. They just don't quite have, I don't know if they don't practice them or they just don't have the power, but it was a very easy save for the Brazilian goalkeeper. But it was very equal, it was very even, and it was a fun game to watch to see how Brazil are going to do with when their talisman Marta retires, because obviously she was suspended for this game for that dangerous high kick in the third game of the groups. So it's interesting to see, and they have got those great players that can still do it and still take it on. And then second half was a bit crazier.
Marta, it should be noted, let's just cover this off the bat because we talking about Wendy Renard, you mentioned Marta. We will see her. We don't know if it'll be in the semi or if it will be in the medal game. But now that Brazil have made the semifinals, they are guaranteed to play for a medal. Which color, we don't know. But even if Marta gets another game added onto her suspension, which would mean that it's a 2-game ban, she doesn't get to play in the semifinal, she will still play in the medal match. So that kind of was a beautiful sight when Brazil scored, no matter who you were rooting for, when the camera flashed over to Marta and you saw the just pure elation on her face at Brazil's goal, you couldn't help but just sit there and be happy for the legend. But let's talk about the chaos, because I don't even know where to begin other than you texted me at one point and said, have I flipped to boxing? Like, it was a full dissension into pure and utter chaos, and I would argue that even happened before Brazil scored that goal. It was, I think what made this game fun is that there was fire, there was passion on. You could see it on both sides of the ball. Was it the prettiest soccer? No, but it was open. It was end to end. And at the end of the day, France just let themselves down. They didn't put the penalty kick away. They had plenty of opportunities and they couldn't tuck it away. And that's it. When given the chance, Brazil were just one goal more efficient than France. And that's the end. That's how it ends for France.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was a French mistake in the midfield that Brazil managed to latch onto. It was a glorious goal, I have to say. It was an absolute stunner of a goal. And then Brazil held on. I think the reason I said it is a boxing match is because the fouls became thick and fast. And I did appreciate that the ref did allow for the game to go on and didn't give everything, but by the end of it she had to give so many yellow cards. I think that Brazil are lucky that cards are wiped at the end of this match, so therefore they can go into the semi-finals with a clean slate, and there were so many double yellow cards.
Yeah, well, there was always like a card for the foul and a card for arguing about it, or the card for the foul and the card for punching somebody after the foul. Like, that's where the double yellows came from. Yeah, and Brazil are lucky that all of those yellow cards were spread around, because I can't believe that nobody got 2 yellow cards on that squad. I believe I texted you. This reminds me of that 2011 moment when it descended into full and utter chaos when Brazil played the U.S. and a Brazilian player got stretchered off and immediately hopped off of the stretcher, ran around and tried to get back into the game. That was the level of chaos this descended into in the 16 minutes of injury time. It needs to be also said, mention injury time. We're talking about Brazil, all of the fouls. Raffaele did go off. I think that's also a moment when your captain, the leader of your back line, goes down and is stretchered off the field. horrible sights to see. First of all, props to Brazil for rallying through. You wouldn't really have been able to tell in how they just were able to pick up exactly where they left off. But Rafaele, we don't know any injury updates on her yet, but missing her for this next game, and frankly, just for the rest of the game against France, is a huge miss.
Yeah, she was
Brazil.
such a bright spark in their defence. She was the reason that they managed to keep France out for so long as they did. And we say it every time, when your centre-back pairing goes down, one of you, it's so hard to get that chemistry as quickly as possible. I do think Brazil managed to do it, though. They were chipping at France, and I think France were getting frustrated towards the end. I think that was the biggest thing, that France got so frustrated towards the end that they were just taking shot after shot after shot and not thinking about it. And therefore, Brazil managed to latch on and hold on, even if it was mental.
I completely agree. And I will say there's credit to be spread all around the field. And I want to touch on some players that I think really deserve shout outs on both sides, but specifically on the Brazil side. But I maybe first, dare I say, want to start off by maybe having a conversation about Arthur Elias, because this is a team that going into this tournament, I was very unconvinced by Arthur Elias. At first, Allie, correct me if I'm wrong, we both kind of liked the direction he was taking this squad. It looked like he was incorporating more players who played their club soccer in Brazil into this squad, but then he left off so many, frankly, like star players for his former club players, for Corinthian players. It felt like he went too far the other way, and we were unconvinced by him. But I will say credit to him for, in this game and throughout the course of the last 4 games now, you can see what he's been able to do, and I'll equate it to kind of how Canada has been so successful in this tournament. He doesn't have a true starting 11. He has 18 players. And when they get plugged in, they know exactly what to do in that role. And it never really feels like there's a drop off. And that's a big credit to him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that is just a really successful way of coaching, especially when you've got such a small squad. When you've only got 18 players, you have to be so careful with the game management, and you have to be able to adapt, because what if, like we saw with Marta, one of the players got sent off? You don't have her anymore. Who is going to fill that gap? So yeah, I'm actually getting more and more in line with what he's thinking, and I'm starting to see it, and it should be now hopefully a new revelation for Brazil.
Yeah, I think I said before the tournament started, this could either be the best thing for them or the worst thing for them, because they've always been very individual player focused, and this felt like an attempt to make it about a team and a structure, and actually not at all about the individual, and we didn't know which direction that would go. It's still kind of up in the air, but this is a big statement, and it has to be said as well. I think that that's a big reason why they pulled this out against France. France, at the end of the day, made fewer substitutions, and they were more tired legs on the field. Brazil were able to keep taking it to France until the very last moment. And we got to shout out goal scorer Gabi Portillo, who, by the way, plays her club soccer, you guessed it, for the Corinthians in Brazil. Not only did she score the winning goal, but she was just on fire down that right flank all game long. Absolutely on fire.
I do want to know very quickly, because just moving from Brazil remotely to France, because I talked about when I last saw France, I said it was like France of old, the way they were playing. We didn't see that this game, and I want to know, what is it going to take for France to live up to their potential? Because we've talked about other teams. We've talked about Sweden and Norway for doing the same thing. France, on paper, have got some of the best players in the world right now, but they are just not hitting the marks that they're supposed to. And they've changed the manager, so it's not the manager anymore. What is it about this French team that is just not hitting where it's supposed to?
I think it's pretty simple. It's big-time goal scorers who come up in big-time moments. They've got big-time goal scorers, but they haven't come up in the big moments. And that is it for the host nation. France are officially eliminated. Brazil are moving on to the semifinals. Allie, before we move on from Brazil, actually, maybe you should throw out your fun fact about Brazil.
This is my favourite fact that I've learned when doing research for the Olympics. So Brazil are the most successful unsuccessful team, in the fact that they are the most successful team to get to the final four in the Olympics and have never taken the gold. They've taken the silver and they've finished fourth a bunch of times, and I believe they've got a bronze, but they've never got the gold. But they are the ones that have got to the most semi-finals since the introduction of women's football in 1996.
Brazil will be taking on Spain, defending World Cup champions, in the first semi-final on Tuesday. And to get there, Spain took down Colombia, honestly, narrowly, barely, but they took down Colombia on pens. Colombia almost did it, though, Allie. For a game that I'll throw my hands up and say I was one of these people, a lot of people wrote this one off and said, Colombia can't do it. Spain will walk over them. There was a moment in this game where Colombia were up 2-0. They almost did it.
Yeah, and you know what? Colombia reminded me so much of that Australia-Zambia game, the crazy one, because it was that what we said about Zambia is what it was for Colombia. It's just they didn't have the depth on the bench that Spain did, and that's essentially what it came down to, because Colombia were doing this low block. They were blocking Spain from running the flanks, which Spain like to do. They were keeping them tight, compressed in the middle, and then again would nick the ball in their own half and then just go on these blistering runs, which is how they scored their 2 goals, because they just got them on the counter. But the problem, and we'll come on to it, is when you took off the 2 biggest players in Colombia, they didn't have anyone to replace them with, whereas Spain could bring on, you know, Hermoso, which they did. They could bring on these great players to take them out, which is why it ended the way it ended.
Yeah, I mean, listen, credit where credit is due to Spain, but I think we do have to focus on Colombia here for a moment in what you just said, because in my opinion, watching this game, I mean, Pavi went down with an injury and was subbed off at the end of the first half. That is a huge loss for Colombia. She's underrated because she falls kind of underneath. You're not going to necessarily talk about her over a Mayra Ramirez or a Linda Caicedo. But for Pavi, Manuela Pavi is so key to this team. She exists in that she's that link up really between the back line and the holding sixes and Mayra Ramirez. And for Pavi to go down with an injury, subbed off, completely off for the rest of the game, at the end of the first half, that was a big loss. And then Linda Caicedo goes down. She has to get taken off with an injury. Also, we don't have an injury update at the time of recording for her. Check our socials for more because we're going to be looking out for that as well. And then Mayra Ramirez gets a cramp. She has to come off. It has to be said that I don't know, and we'll never know, what could have happened if all 3 of those players remain on at the same time, or throughout the entire game. Because what ended up happening with all 3 of those players exiting the field is that Colombia's attack was essentially nullified. And then it was just an onslaught from Spain. And there's only a certain amount of time you can hold up when there's an onslaught from Spain.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And they were pinging balls left, right and centre. Obviously, I honestly did think Colombia were going to do it because it went to 2-1 in extra time before official extra time. And I thought they were going to cling on. But in the 97th minute, a beautiful goal made it 2-2. And then they were clinging on for penalties, and unfortunately, Colombia are not good penalty takers.
They are not good penalty takers. They definitely showed us that in this game. I have to say, though, a big shout out to Catherine Tapia, the goalkeeper of Colombia. We shouted her out at the beginning of this episode, but she was my player of the match. She had to be. For Colombia to hold Spain scoreless for that long, she was taking on so many shots. And before we move on to Spain, because yes, there were bangers scored, did Spain deserve to win that game? I think at the end of the day, yes, but for the majority of the game, Colombia, honestly, were deserving of being in the lead 1-0, 2-0, 2-1. They really were.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think for me, with Colombia is the age-old story of look at your federation, look at what you could do if you just put in that little bit more funding, because they've got some great players and some great talent, but it's not quite there yet. But they could become a powerhouse in the future.
All right, let's talk about Spain, because we have to. Jenny Hermoso, was it me or was it just, you got a feeling when she came on, she scored so many big goals, clutch goals in her time. When she came on the field, it felt like, hey, it feels like it's been building for Spain anyways. there's no way that they go down without scoring at least one goal in this game. And it felt like when she came on, it was about to happen. And she came up huge. And if she doesn't get that first goal, I mean, that kind of broke the floodgates for Spain, in my opinion. Anything could have happened.
Yeah, no, to be honest, I think Spain were quite complacent. They went down really early. They went down at the 12th minute. And I think they thought it was going to be an easier game than it was. And they weren't quite there. But again, you have those talisman players that can come on and just change the attitude and change the game. And I think they would have wanted to win it in extra time and not gone to penalties, but they know they've got that in their bank, that they have got solid penalty takers. So if it was going to come down to that, then they were going to take it.
Yeah, once those big three for Colombia were subbed off, it felt like they had to play for pens. But when you go to pens against Spain, I mean, you just see the class on that team. Before we get to the pens, I mean, Hermoso got the first goal. Paredes with the equalizer. She looked like a forward with that goal. I was literally, my fiance was sitting there and was like, she's a center back? How did she score that? And she's a center back. That was a class goal from Irene Paredes. And it had to be her. It had to be the captain. She doesn't get talked about enough. She's just so steady for this team. And it's exactly what they need. And the fact that she got a goal and it was the equalizer to send them into extra time, I'm so happy for her. But at the end of the day, Colombia lose it on pens. And I think we always talk about depth in this tournament, Allie. That was part of it. There was no replacing Mayra Ramirez. There was no replacing Linda Caicedo. When they went down, the attack had kind of disintegrated for Colombia. And on the other hand, Spain are over here taking off Patri Guijarro just because they wanted to take her off. Like, who does that? And that was a big difference. And then when it came down to it, a lot of the subs had to line up for the penalty kicks, and it was Spain's depth. It was their world classness. And to win a tournament, there has to be an ugly game. A lot of, honestly, maybe all of these games, we can say, were ugly wins. These were maybe all ugly wins for all of these winners.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
Over to the other side of the bracket. We're going to talk about the first game of the day. USA versus Japan. First question, Sarah, has your heart rate calmed down after that one?
That one didn't even raise my heart rate. I was just like, is it boring or is it 6 a.m.? Like, I was like, are my eyes halfway closed because of this game or because I'm exhausted? I don't know that my heart rate ever went up in that game. It was so slow. And we just mentioned ugly wins. What an ugly win for the U.S. But hey, like I said, you got to have some ugly wins to win a tournament. We all know the U.S. struggles. Everybody struggles against the low block, but specifically, I think the U.S. have like an extra hard time with it, and that definitely showed. I said on the last episode with Tim, Japan are going to come out in a 5-back, and this is, if the U.S. win, it's going to be 1-0, because Japan are going to test this team and their abilities to break down a low block. And credit to Japan, because I honestly thought that they controlled this game starting from the 46th minute on. And the U.S., honestly, just on the backs of the front three, were able to put one away. But the U.S. fell into the trap of playing Japan's game and playing into their game plan. That's what happened.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Japan are the masters of that low block. I did think what was interesting is one of the commentators I had was Gilly Flaherty, who played at Chelsea under Emma Hayes. And she was saying that Emma Hayes is used to trying to break down a low block as managing Chelsea, because pretty much every team that played Chelsea played them in a low block to try and stop them from scoring. So she's used to doing that, the breaking down. But Japan do it to perfection. We've talked about this for so long. They play such defensive football and then bring forward certain players to try and score, and they did it. But what they did, I thought, really well was they had a roving back five, because it wasn't set in stone. They had one player that would run back if the US were breaking, but then would go play more of a midfield role to bring the ball forward. And they had some great creative plays. Their finishing just wasn't on par today. And obviously Rodman got that goal to take it 1-0. But I did think Japan were probably the better side.
Oh, interesting. I don't know that Japan were the better side. I thought that they executed their game plan a lot better, but I wouldn't necessarily go all the way to that. I mean, this game was ridiculous. You look at the possession statistics, 71% US, 29% Japan. And then you look at the shots, 15 for the US, 12 for Japan, but then shots on target, Japan had 1 shot on target. The US had 4. The reality is there's a graphic that shows all of the US's completed passes, and it just tells the whole story of the game. There's lines everywhere on the field, with the exception, basically, of the attacking third, which is definitely an issue. Like, it was slow. If I was to describe this game, because the U.S. had the ball 71% of the time, I would describe it as slow, because all the U.S. were doing was pinging the ball around the back. And that's fine. Like, patience is great. And Emma Hayes is instilling patience into this team. But there's a difference between being patient and just playing slow. And it was just slow. It was like 2-3 touches on the ball every time. It was predictable. It was the same pass every time. And you look at, like, when Naomi Girma got the ball in the back and she looked up the field to see where everybody is, everybody's just standing. That's slow. And that's not how you break down a low block, just by slowly passing it around the back. There's a big difference, and I think it got conflated for the U.S. And my only disappointment with this team right now is that it didn't feel like they were able to execute an adjustment in the second half. Everybody's pretty upset about lack of substitutions, whatever. That doesn't bother me as much. I just thought we were going to see more urgency with them in the second half, and we didn't. But again, at the end of the day, you got to have an ugly game, and they pulled it out. At the end of the day, they didn't concede, because it did feel like whoever scored first in that game, there was going to be one goal. And so whoever scored first was going to take it, and that's what happened.
I will clarify why I thought Japan were the better team, because yes, they did execute their game plan well, but they also nullified the US. It wasn't until that there was tired legs at the very end. If you look at the game as a whole, your midfield, apart from Rose Lavelle, were no good. They were useless. Haran was off pace again, missed passes, gave the ball away to a Japanese player constantly. I believe one of my favourite tweets of the day was, every time the USA play, it's not 11 versus 11, it's 10 versus 12, because Haran will find a way to give the ball to the opposition. Corbin Albert was next to ineffective. You go down the flanks, which the USA are so good with, and so that's where their best play is, and Rodman was nullified by the Japanese on the flank. You know, Smith was nullified by the Japanese on the flank. It just didn't. Swanson got nullified time and time again with that block. I feel that the unfortunate thing was that Japan just couldn't score, but I felt in terms of play, because they both had game plans, I just feel like Japan's was better, and it just broke down at the very, very end of a very long game.
It's possible. I mean, it's such different game plans, and it kind of depends on how you look at it. I will say, I didn't think Sophia Smith was nullified. I thought she did a great job. I thought Swanson couldn't find her way into the game. And I thought Trinity Rodman, while it felt like she was having an off day with her touch, she made up for it tenfold with the way she was working. She was end line to end line, and that girl was back on defense every single time. And part of the reason it maybe felt like she was nullified on the flank is that she was literally end line to end line. Like, when the USA were trying to counter, she was caught back where Emily Fox was trying to get forward, and there was just not enough rotation. But I feel like we're getting into the nitty gritty of the U.S. Like I will say at the end of the day, they got the win, and this doesn't feel like it did, last year where it's like, oh well, that was really ugly, and I have no hope for what's next. But hey, at least they tied or they got the win. This was like, okay, this was an ugly game, but we figured it out, and we moved forward and we continued to build. And the only thing really that bothered me was just the lack of movement off the ball. We'll have Sam Coffey back in the next game. That'll be a big change. She'll have fresh legs. That'll be fantastic. Obviously, we don't know the injury status of Emily Fox. That was terrifying. She went down grabbing her knee, and it didn't look pretty. Again, head to our socials. We'll update you as soon as we know everything. Fingers are really crossed. But at the end, this game could have gone either way. It really could have. I think that's what we're coming to, Allie. Like, it could have gone either way, and the U.S. ended up taking it off of a banger of a goal from Trinity Rodman. Big props to her. The relief rushing off of her face when she scored that, you could feel. But Japan had a great tournament, so I'll be sad to see them go.
Do you know what? I thought they had a great tournament. They played some great football. Again, I feel like they are like France, whereas I don't know what it is it's going to take them to get over that next hurdle, because they do have some great talent. Maybe they just need Endo back, and that will be the missing piece, and we'll see it in the Asian Cup and the World Cup in a couple of years' time, because on paper they've got some brilliant players, some really great tactical players, and I think we're going to see it as they move away from playing in Japan and move over towards a more funded, more established leagues. We're seeing them come to the WSL Europe, NWSL. Then we will see a Japan of old that can take on the best of them, but they're not there yet. And then finally, to the final game of the quarterfinals, it is Canada versus Germany, which was 0-0 throughout somehow.
Truly, how, Allie? I cannot believe it was 0-0.
Yep. So in the end, Germany took it on pens. We just want to give a very big shout out to Anne-Katrin Berger. And if you want to see something really adorable, Jess Carter has retweeted the 2 videos of her pen save and her penalty scored, being like, that's my fiance. Like, it was really adorable. So if you want to see that. But yeah, this game, I do hate the phrase because it is a cliche of a game of 2 halves. But this was, because the first half was
100%.
This first half was all Germany, and Canada were very lucky to stay in it. And then second half, Canada came out all guns blazing, and
and then extra time was just absolute dissension into chaos.
And then it went to pens, and then the pens happened. Like,
I thought you were gonna say it was a game of 2 halves. The first was insanely boring, and the second was so entertaining. I do have to say, Allie, you texted me about this, so I feel like I have to say on the podcast. I said in our preview episodes, I didn't know if Berger was going to start. I was wrong, everybody.
It's not just me.
She came up huge. I will say, though, this is some of the best I've ever seen her play. Maybe ever, but definitely in the past 3 years. She's having a tournament, and it's fantastic. But AKB, she's the new Alyssa Nair. She's saving pens. She's making pens. She's the hero. She made that final penalty to send Germany to the semis. Oh my gosh. Where to even begin? Allie? I'll say this. And let's start in the 46th minute maybe. I really thought that I was going to root for Germany for the pure reason that I feel like the US plays Canada a lot, and the US had already won. So whoever won this game was going to play the US, and I was like, we play Canada a lot. Maybe I want Germany to win so we can play Germany. And then at about the 50th minute, I was like, damn it, I want Canada. This team, we have to spend a moment because they've been eliminated, and I want to kind of send them off into the sunset well as we do our Hunger Games goodbye. We have to talk about what a tournament this team has had, and I'm going to argue that I'm more moved by them in this tournament than I was when they won the gold medal. They have been outstanding, and they have played with so much heart, and they've taken a tournament that 100% was overshadowed by the scandal of the drones, and they've made it about their heart, their grit, and what they do on the field, and they've truly made anybody that was watching, I don't want to talk about anybody that wasn't watching because who knows what they think, but anybody that was watching that might have been a little bit of a hater, I don't want Canada to win because they were spying, whatever, they've turned everybody into a fan with how they played.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think you see the interviews where they're like, well, we're not cheaters, we work really hard, and you could see that, the absolute passion that came from that Canada side. And again, they were so unlucky because that second half was all them, and they had some brilliant moments and some brilliant shots that just didn't quite pay off. And I did want them, like, no offense Germany, but I did want them to go through.
It was hard not to. It was hard not to while you were watching them play, you know? But they did. They changed the narrative. They played their hearts out, and they deserve all the respect. I thought Buchanan had an outstanding game this game. Like, she's always pretty locked down, solid in the back for Canada, but she was standout, I thought, today.
Yeah, I'd say that was a good shout for Buchanan. I thought Quinn was amazing for Canada today. Again, played with such passion and heart and was getting in there where needed. Took the first penalty, which is always a nervous thing to do, and was absolutely solid. So Quinn would probably be my player.
For me, it just really felt like Canada have said that, you know, they think that they can win this tournament, and they won in Tokyo because they have the best 18. And, you know, we kind of talked about, we've already talked about this even on this episode, where you don't want it to drop off when you start to make subs. And for a while, I genuinely thought Canada were going to win this game because Germany started to fall off. And I thought that these teams were pretty equal on depth. I think Canada kind of proved me wrong on that. Like, Germany, first of all, they made fewer subs, but every sub that Canada made, which was many, nothing fell off. They just got better and better. And Germany started to look a little tired, a little predictable, a little out of ideas. And Canada were the opposite. They were dynamic. They were free-flowing. Again, shocked we did not see a goal. The fact that this went to pens is really, I think, the only reason that Canada lost. If it was just a continuation and extension of we're going to play for as long as we can until somebody scores, I think it might have gone to Canada because they were a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've talked about with Germany, and the loss of Oberdorf is massive. They were a bit better this time than when we saw them last time around in the last game of the groups, but there is still something missing with Germany, and I don't know what it is, and I'm hoping that this win will spark them, because there is just something not quite right. That's just, the play isn't going the way it should. It feels like there's a lack of communication or miscommunication between, you know, the different sections of defense, midfield and up front, because it just isn't there for them. And if they want any chance of going in to get that gold medal, they need to buck their ideas up.
Yeah, and this isn't to take anything away from Germany. Like, they won this game, they deserve to win this game. They like we already said, it kind of descended into full chaos for 30 minutes, and it was very even in extra time. For me, I think you're right though when you mention Oberdorf, and I hate to just continue to bring it up, but you look at the right side of the field for Germany, and it's Gwyn, it's Schuler and Brand, and they're outstanding on that right side. The left side a little weaker, but a lot of Germany's attacks, almost all of them, were really going up the right side because they can't switch the play through that midfield. They have that missing link in the middle to connect from side to side, and I think it's really affecting just how they're able to go forward, and that's why they're relying heavily on that combination on the right side and Brand, Gwyn, and Schuler.
I think, though, Anne Katzenberger was the absolute star of that performance, both in the game and in the pens. I think she's ice cold. Talk about ice in your veins, where most goalkeepers, when you're doing a penalty, try and make themselves look as big as possible to try and put off the play. She had her hands behind her back and was just standing.
I was just about to say, did you see? She's literally standing with her hands behind her back.
To like,
insane.
That must have really put them off, because they were like, what's she doing? What's she doing? And then to score the winning goal. But you talk about she's played some of the best football in 3 years. I genuinely think it feels like she's got her love of the game back. I think.
Yeah, she's had a resurgence since coming to the NWSL.
So Gotham has really given her her confidence, and I think the love of the game back, that she has been very public and been very open about losing. And I think for me, she's clearly Germany's number one right now. Like, clearly. And it's going to be exciting to see Neha versus AKB in the next round.
All right, let's do it. What everybody's been waiting for, what we've been waiting for, Allie. Predictions, previews of the semifinals. We've got 2 games on Tuesday, everybody. And a reminder, all 4 of these teams are going to play in the semis and then for a medal. We're just determining right now which medal they're going to play for. So the first semifinal on Tuesday, August 6th, the United States takes on Germany. Are you going on vibes from the tournament so far, or are you going to like stick to your predictions from pre-tournament?
Do you know what? I'm going by vibes now, because having watched it, I'm like, I still think the US may edge it, because I still think they're going to be in the final. I know they've already played Germany and battered them. However, I feel like Germany are going to come into this game with more confidence than the US are going to from their game against Japan, because they've done it now. They've done it all. They've gone through the extra time and the pens and everything else. I think that's going to really ramp up their confidence. I do think it's going to be a long old game. I think it's going to be 1-1 through the main time. It could go to penalties, which will be an exciting, because both the US and Germany are quite good at penalties.
We might have Alyssa Nair versus AKB just trading off. One of them's in goal while the other takes it, and then they just flip.
Which is what to be honest, I would put good money on that. So I do think it's going to be a tighter game than it was in the groups. I think the USA may edge it just, but I do think it's going to go to pens.
Here's the thing. First of all, when the US were playing and it went into extra time, I got worried because in a tournament like this, fatigue is real. And when you have to add 30 minutes onto legs that have to play 3 days later, that's crazy. But at the end of the day, now everybody has an extra 30 minutes, basically. I'm going to include Brazil in that because that was may as well have been an extra 30 minutes. So it kind of evens the playing field. But point number 2 is it's hard to beat a team twice in a row, especially this close together. So I do think that kind of gives the edge to Germany a little bit. But at the end of the day, I'm going to pick the U.S. for many reasons. But I think the main one is that the U.S. play the best when they play against a team that is not in a low block. And Germany are not going to play a low block. That's just not how they play. And it's going to allow the U.S. to open up a lot more in the ways that they want to. And I think it's going to pay off in dividends. So I've got the U.S. I think it'll be like a 2-1 U.S. All right, second game is Brazil versus Spain. Listen, this is a hard one because I felt extremely confident selecting Spain last time. And Brazil's got a thing about them right now. It's becoming a little hard to bet against them. And it's funny because the tournament I decide to drop them as my dark horse and drop them as my, dark favorites. They're doing it. I think I'm going to stick with Spain. I just like at the end of the day, you look at the quality that they have and you look at the depth that they have, and it's just kind of impossible to bet against it. I don't know if Marta's going to be back at this moment. We don't know if Marta's going to be there for Brazil. It looks like Rafaele is probably not going to play, and I just have to, at the end of the day, give it to Spain. I think we're going to see a U.S.-Spain gold medal match.
I too am going to give it to Spain.
Oh, we've got the same finals. Maybe I should pick Brazil just to pick
I am kind of cheering on Brazil for it because I feel like I want Marta to have that fairy tale ending and actually get her gold medal, or at least a chance of getting her gold medal. But I'm looking at the Spain bench versus the Brazilian bench, and I think Brazil can go hard and fast first and may even draw first blood, but Spain have got the talent and the pull to be patient and to pull it back, and that's very, very hard to beat. But then look at France-Brazil today. It took one mistake and Brazil latched on and then managed to do it. But I do think Spain will eke it. Again, it will be a 2-1. It won't be anything massive. It won't be a battering. But yeah, my head says Spain, my heart says Brazil.
I feel the same way. I really do. I will say, though, I do think that there is a difference between going up against, the attack of Spain versus the attack of France. Yeah, I think it'll actually be like a 3-1 Spain. All right, there we have it. There's only 4 games left in this whole tournament, Allie. There's only 4. Yeah, does that make you sad?
A little bit.
You're always at the end of tournaments. You're always like, a little, but I'm tired.
It's just this tournament feels so much more intense than previous tournaments because of the setup and the way it's done, and so it's a lot. But I'm excited. I am excited for the final games, but it's been a lot.
I feel like it's been weird. There's been some weird games. We haven't seen a ton of like beautiful football. Just a lot of weird things happening, which can also be very entertaining. So I'm not complaining about it. All right, everybody, don't forget Tuesday are the semifinals. That means that we will see you on Wednesday for our episode recapping the semis and, of course, previewing the gold medal and the bronze medal match for the women's soccer show. I've been Sarah.
I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.